Okay, good morning. Morning. How was your weekend? Yeah. Anything fun? Anybody go to the river diving ceremony? You went? It's crazy, right? You went? What area were you going? Were you like on Michigan Avenue side or like on a bridge or on a white? Anybody else? It's nice. That's fun. Oh, you went too?
We went to Wisconsin.
You went to Wisconsin? What part?
It was
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
And the weather was good too. Did you go on Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday, like, we just there for a little bit.
Nice. Did you get out on the water at all?
No, it's just girls, but we had the house. We went out there. Hung out.
All right. Hey, how are we looking with our global marketing presentations and projects, et cetera, et cetera? Has anyone began their project? No? You got it? What are you working on?
Right now I'm working on, what the market, how we put that they want.
Okay, well, what did you end up choosing?
Visual.
Okay.
Visual.
What are the rest of you, have you at least chose or selected? What are you doing?
Mine is, in Bangladesh.
Oh, yes. Okay, we talked.
Yeah.
Tim?
I was looking into the Philippines. I was gonna do something with like VPNs.
Okay, all right. Nothing yet?
Solar powered irrigation in Bangladesh.
Oh, Bangladesh too? Right here.
I use, Vietnam, and I'm really good AI powered test.
AI power, what was that last one?
It's like for the test, power test.
Oh, like test, like, okay, AI power. Okay, interesting.
I chose to export it,
Actually export this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No Wingstop in China.
A Wingstop. Interesting. So have you researched that so far to say, are there any Wingstops in China at all?
Yeah, so they're actually talking about doing it, but I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
So it's kind of crazy that I thought of it, because they were also thinking about it.
Yeah, you're like, it is interesting, because I think China has probably one of the largest markets for chicken.
Yeah.
How do you penetrate into that? All right, excellent. Hey, today we're going to talk about product services and symbolism, right? Symbols with the things that we're making offerings for in different countries. What exactly is a product? How can we differentiate it? Its attributes, the perceptual benefits that people have of it. And then we'll talk more about standardization and adaptation. Do we send out the same product all over the world, or do we adapt it for specific cultures and all the other issues that we come up against? Remember we said, hey, the real goal is to have economies of scale, right? Who would tell me what economies of scale is? What is it in simple terms? Economies of scale, like scale. Right? Think of just a simple concept like, hey, if we can produce more of anything, whether it's just a product or service or the business itself, if we can expand, we can potentially lower the cost of what we offer to customers. If we lower the cost, we can beat our competitors. We beat our competitors, and we become the leaders in whatever it is we do. In simple terms, right? So like, whether we scale the business, we have 10,000 stores, 30,000, like McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, et cetera, et cetera. You're like, will we have some sort of leeway to lower our price versus others, because they don't have that type of leeway, right? They constrain a little too much, right? So they say, hey, the goal for any business, if they're trying to go really big or be hugely successful, is to have economies of scale the business, which is interesting when you see like a new, say, retail chain start. Anybody, yeah, you're like, man, I'm starting to see like a lot of these stores very, very quickly. Like, you guys already have 1,000 stores, but yeah, building them in all the malls across America, on the ramp stops, on highway systems, et cetera, et cetera. You're like, well, why are you going so big? You don't even know if this really works like that. We're like, well, that's our strategy. Right, so we say in essence, it's just a strategy, right? It still can fail. But like it has a particular strategy to be a market leader, to have control of the market. When I was coming back from the East Coast during the break, something I noticed differently than I noticed before, because you know, you used to have a travel van, kind of van life stuff, like just travel all over the country, like Canada. And I would see is, you know, all the stops. So I don't know what kind of stores were there, what kind of advertisements, was trends, and just there's a ton of 7-Elevens now. Like 7-Eleven has really, especially going east. I'm not sure about going west if I do it different, but going east, if you travel on the highway system, the major sort of stops that are always McDonald's, could be Wendy's, go out there, your basic gas stations. Et cetera. But 7-Eleven has expanded tremendously. So like 7-Eleven is like really the go-to convenience store, but really it's not even convenience stores, because these are huge 7-Elevens with different stores inside, Starbucks inside of the 7-Eleven. Right? So you know, you're like, well, okay, I see what you did. You still got standardized 7-Eleven, but you added the adaptation to say, hey, people want different options. You have a hot food section where potentially make food, like a chicken section. So yeah, it was something I noticed. I was like, oh, okay, 7-Eleven is really expanded, hugely expanded in stores. It's scaling, right? Really, which is really good, I guess, for, you know, if you're a stockholder in 7-Eleven, et cetera. So we say, hey, you know, standardize or adapt. Standardize or adapt. So here's my first question. Before we even start the lecture, let's have a group discussion, right? Try to think of 5 products or services that standardize or adapt. 5 of each. And maybe think of the reasons why you think it is standardized or adapted for some reason. Right? Try to think of 5 things that you observed, noticed, anywhere. So like, hey, they really just kind of push the same thing out all over. It could be a company as well too. Or you're like, yeah, no, I see, but they always change it. Right? There's different into it based on the environment, culture, or something like that. So I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes to talk with your group. Let's do groups of 2. 2, 2, 2, 2. That work? So 5 of each. So we'll be trying to figure out, like, hey, why is it working with standardized? You know? Because if it's standardized and we say, hey, that's a different strategy, you are a product centered strategy. You basically forced it on the customer, like, or, you know, like we said, adaptive, like, that's kind of a marketing centered strategy. You focused on the customer. What's the customer? Right? Different strategies, for some may work, for some may not, but just think about some products, services that you've observed out there, each category. Kind of think of why you think they do stuff like that. All right. To make it a little bit easier, you don't have to think necessarily of form. You don't have to go to the other side of the world. You can maybe even think of here, in Chicago or in the US. In fact, I've seen it different somewhere else than I have in another place, right? I've seen two different products, or virtually the same product, but they're adapted in some way, they changed in some way. Right? Here, I put kind of an example, right? Like, hey, culturally adapted products. Who knows it can be produced by Lay's potato chips, Jay's potato chips, et cetera, right? Because like, hey, why not just put the flavor? Because if I go to buy Lay's and Jay's, it could be barbecue, plain, ruffles, gravy, right? All these different things like that. But do I need to eat Fetty Wap potato chips? And if so, why is Fetty Wap on the potato chips? Right? Maybe sexy red flame hot. Right? Or some Kendrick Lamar barbecue. What's the point? You're like, well, it has a great benefit. Benefit to someone, some group, right? And some environment. You know, you culturally adapted it because there's a benefit. It has to be some sort of perceived benefit that works, that makes it in demand, right? So, this is kind of example, you know, I'm being a little bit humorous here, but at the same time, like, this is a good example of if simply by going to another neighborhood, right? I see you use different kind of chips, and they are produced by the larger manufacturers. But I just, why is it different here versus different? Why do you standardize packages? Beef and barbecue, sour cream and ranch. Why do you add the extra, sort of cultural features to it? Right? Well, it works. Yeah. But why does it work? So I just kind of put that as a template for you to get some ideas. When you think about marketing, how much goes into like the simple ideas is amazing, right? You gotta pick the colors, the backgrounds, you gotta have a reason for picking the colors, like what colors work, the fonts, right? Packaging, what kind of packaging, the size, right? The portions. I think people do larger portions here, so we market larger portions here, we don't eat that much. In Europe, right, we smaller portions of food. Like now, Europe has restrictions on all sorts of things we can't put into a flavor, therefore it may not be the same product. The question really is McDonald's, if they're selling octopus in Japan, is it still McDonald's? And if so, what is McDonald's? In your mind, what's your perception of McDonald's? Like, well, it's not octopus, or it's not a vegan, it's good anyway. Pork collar cheese, double cheeseburger, fries, right? So you're like, well, what's actually being sold? What's the core product being sold? It has to have some sort of true meaning to customers for it to be sold and demanded. Which makes it complicated, makes it very challenging, but also makes it very exciting too, because it opens up new opportunities. All right, anyone need a couple more minutes? All right, one more minute. Maybe we don't have 5 minutes. All right. We should carry some of these in the vending machine now. Okay? Hey, do you think we would sell more if we carried some of this stuff in the vending machines in school? Like just say your favorite arts, not have to be these. What if it was baseball? Okay.
Well, I think the flavors are good.
Yeah. Taylor Swift tortilla chips. Right. Swift chips. All right, let me see your thoughts. Well, what are you thinking? Let's start here.
Alright, so we wrote down our 5 for both. For standardized, we said Ford, Burger King, Fuller, Starbucks, and Subway. And for non-standardized, we said like electric vehicles, or like different companies. Oreo, Wendy's, McDonald's, Fanta, and Southwest.
Those
Actually,
are
Southwest.
adapted. You said those are the adapted ones?
Yeah.
Could you just give me an example, pick one of your own shoes, and why is it, you believe this, it works being standardized?
Well, Ford has always remained the same, like American kind of values and their big trucks and all that. That's kind of how they sell to people sometimes. And then
of their culture.
Yeah.
Not the same. Okay. All right, very good list.
So the first one we had was McDonald's and how their menu structure has changed. We also did Red Bull, the flavor.
So this is adapted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Then we did Netflix and how they adopted globally and live sporting events.
I think Netflix is perfect for that, right? It's like so many different foreign films on there, subtitles, and that.
And we did Spotify, how they have now like playlist plugins. And then we did Apple, iPhone, and how they have localized languages and culturally specific features.
Okay, so is Apple, did they change the product or they change the advertising, like promotions, stuff?
I believe both.
Both?
Yeah, like they obviously advertise different in different countries.
Okay.
But I think the research advancements in technology also.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And for, what do you think, on the flip side?
Flip side, I want what was just saying earlier, like car companies. Certain car companies have adapted, and certain ones kind of just stay in what they know. Another one would be like, I was thinking of this, this company that makes like engines for like semis. They haven't really changed much, like their engine hasn't changed in like 10 years, so it's kind of like just stick to what they know and don't really advertise anything else.
How do you, who can name an example of how maybe a car manufacturer does adapt culturally? In what way?
I believe like Toyota, when they make their, it's, rather what the truck is called, it's like Hidas or something like that. They make it in Australia. They make it like, they make a visual format of it. It's like in Tacoma, but it's just, one is diesel and two is just kind of built for kind of like the rough landscape.
So the suspension, like.
Yeah, suspension is a little like tougher
Mhm.
than like the American made, so I believe like that's an example. Because you can't get it anywhere else other than Australia.
Yeah, that's a good example. I think of just steering. Left-hand side steering, right. Was there anything else? Okay.
So we had a bit more difficulty coming up with standardized ones than we did ones that adapted. For the ones that adapted, we had McDonald's, they changed their menu and even their prices depending on where they're at. She had used an example of how the prices changed when McDonald's was in Missouri as opposed to Illinois,
Yeah.
and she saw that shift. Another thing we had mentioned was water bottles. You have like the basic ones that they get the message across, it's a water bottle, but they aren't trying to do anything special. Then you have other ones like one that you always bring to class that try to stand out more, try to look fancy, look nice. Another thing we've used was iPhones or the App Store, and how they'll change what they're selling based on different countries. So some apps might be banned in certain places.
Yeah.
And the last thing I thought of was wrestling. Here in America, it's very interactive with the crowd, but overseas, it's more of a performance that you get to watch and less interactive. As far as standardized things, the only thing I could think of really was like fruit. You can't really like change it up too much other than what she had mentioned was you might like pre-slice it before you put it into the packaging,
Yeah.
but there's not a whole lot to change there.
Okay. I mean, could we think of, some differences in how fruit or vegetables are kind of presented in different places? Yeah.
We got the example of baby carrots. So baby carrots are just the carrots that come out like uglier. They just shave down
simply like the nomenclature, like just the naming of things. We say organic. In other countries, like organic, we talk everything here is organic, right? Like we grow, we source it, we get it from here. In America, you're like, no, we have so much genetically modified food. We have fruits and vegetables that are modified. They're this big. And you're like, well, that's clearly not how originated species of fruit and vegetables came, right? In other countries, you can't find that banana, right? Or you can't find that humongous avocado. What is that? So we present it, like we should just promote it in a different way, right? Or change the name, organic versus non-organic. And you're like, oh, they got different prices? Yeah, you gotta pay more to be healthy. In other places, that may not be the case, right? But yeah, I mean, food is, it's pretty universal, I would say, across the board. Anything else? Tim, on the flip? Okay, flip about, did you think of anything that was staying in your eyes? Okay. What was I thinking when, yeah, prices, like you mentioned Wendy's and McDonald's. If I go downtown, some of the McDonald's don't have a $5 meal. They don't have the $1 meal, the $2 meal, the $3 special. They don't have any of it. They don't have the $3, whatever. Like, why? This is tourist area, right? You want to maximize all the money, right? Why? Because the rent is more expensive, and this and that, and all these different things, right? There's a different culture, right? Just one few months, yeah.
What do you think, why does he say that, like, prices not changing, Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, Chick-fil-A don't really, yeah, they don't do it much. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty ethical. Yeah, like I said, they're pretty ethical, so they probably think it's like crappy rules to use that. Which, at the end of the day, then you have me saying Chick-fil-A is an ethical company, right? So I see the value. So I wouldn't say the words that I just came out of my mouth. All right. In the back.
So some of the products that we noticed changed was, for example, Starbucks. Starbucks here, Starbucks in Mexico were really different. Over there they have seasonal drinks, but they're based around customs, which I guess we could apply here as well. But for example, we have King Steak bread. We have Mexican hot chocolate, but they tell you what brand it is because most people are in a debate about whether one brand or the other is better. So they tell you which brand it is. And then they also do Day of the Dead bread. Another example is Kit Kats in Japan. Here we have just the regular Kit Kats, maybe white chocolate, dark chocolate, but that's about it. And over there we saw some different flavors. We saw sweet potato, matcha, which you can find sometimes here, but it's very rare, and wasabi.
Yeah, it was an interesting flavor. And then you gotta think Kit Kat in Japan, like the word Kit Kat means like victory of the cat or winning of the cat. Something like that. Something positive. That's why it works, right? Remember we said in Coca-Cola in China means something that's not good. Right? So they change the word, you leave the word, but they're loving this Kit Kat. It works.
Then we have Costco. In Mexico, there's different toppings for different things. So there are variations in the food court as well. Or even for a hot dog. Here you have relish and people just have relish. And over there you have like tomato yolk, chile gallo, you have bacon sometimes on top, you have sour cream, you have ketchup. And we also put ketchup on pizza, which is a weird
France.
No, that's in Mexico.
That's in Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have that. And then for something that's a little bit more standardized, the Big Mac, McDonald's, does not change. So everywhere you go, the Big Mac will always be a Big Mac. That's interesting.
Okay, excellent, yeah. And I don't know if they changed the fries, either. I don't know. I don't know if they changed the fries. All right, great examples. If you like to stay in your seats or return back to your seats, you can. Before we start lecture, we got any words today? Anybody got any words? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, great examples, right? We were kind of understanding like, hey, do we standardize? Do we adapt? If so, what's the reason? Like there's legal stuff in that country. We can't add that chemical to it. There's some offensive stuff with packaging. Color means, color black is more dark, it means death in the West, and some places in the Far East it means good luck, right? Like, should we use that color, use a different color on the packaging, the product. People eat different portion sizes, right? We have 12 ounces, we should use 6-ounce packages because it's in Europe, you don't need that much. There's a lot to consider all these different sorts of decisions that we have to make. Okay, which leads us into chapter 9, product strategy, physical, service, and symbolic attributes. All right, so first of all, let's learn what is a product. All right, anything that can be offered to a market for attention, acquisition, use, or consumption, and that might satisfy a want or need. So a service could be a product too, right? At the end of the day, you get a haircut, it's still bought a look. You bought a look, right? The service was giving the look. You go to a restaurant, yeah, it's a service, but you ate some food, you bought, you need a product, right? But depending on all the other factors, the ambiance, the quality of the food, the wait staff, will, so you demanded it, you ever return back to it, if you're happy or satisfied or dissatisfied. Products can be physical objects, services. Products can be people, such as what? What's an example of products being people? Right, we just saw Fetty walk on the chips. Right? You're like, hey, we need a celebrity sponsor. Why? People like to consume anything with that celebrity sponsor. It influences their opinion, their demand, right? It influences their mind. So put LeBron James on there, right? Put Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, whoever. We also did that too with movies, right? Like, oh man, what's in the movie with Tom Cruise? Why? I like Tom Cruise. What's in the movie? Like, what about the movie itself? I don't know. Places. Products can be places. What's an example of that? How do products be places?
Like Disney World,
Yeah. Yeah, like Disney World sells Disney World, right? It sells everything about that place. It's a magical place, the magic of Disney World. It's literally in the advertisement, the places they sell. We see that too with states. 100% here in Michigan. Like, whoa, the state government is promoting the place. Like, yeah, they're trying to get more tourists to come consume this place. Organizations. Anybody can think of an example of that as a product? Organization as a product? Anything not for profit or profit? Right? We can think of maybe all sorts of charities, philanthropies, foundations, right? Like, man, I really trust that company. They do really good stuff. Right? I want to be a member or supporter, give money, throw my money to PETA, right? Or Save the Widows or something of the sort, right? Like, the organization itself is really the product. Ideas. Hey, what's an example you could think of as a product.
I think you could also go with charities for a lot of these as well, because like, St. Jude's is trying to stop, cancer, they're doing the cancer research. So they're selling that idea of trying to stop this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an idea. The idea is that we can beat cancer, right? We can fight cancer. How do we get to that idea of the children and advertising show the place, with research and development, et cetera, et cetera. Think of recipes. You better help me sell a recipe. Well, what's the recipe? What could be a concoction, an idea of some sort. Or some combination of these, right? Usually it's an integration of multiple aspects of this. Hey, customers buy products not for their features, such example here is a Pentium 4 processing chip, or functionalities, speed, but for the perceived benefits they deliver. Is this true? And if so, can you think of something that you buy for the perceived benefits? Can you think of an example of something you buy for the perceived benefits that it gives?
Like coffee for caffeine,
Yeah. What does it do?
makes you energized.
Yeah, you like, hey, at some point it may, at this point, maybe a placebo. Right? You like, you may drink coffee and just feel great. Why? Because you drink coffee every day. And expecting to feel great. Right? So there's an expectation, perceived benefit. But I don't know. Do you believe that you actually buy things for function and for their features? I believe so, right? Because if we're talking coffee, not all coffee is good coffee, right? Yeah, it may have the caffeine, and the caffeine is probably, the same compound or something, right? But it's not good. So the final product is, for me, I may be disappointed because it doesn't really do what I want it to do. Levels of product attributes. A car, we say a car has physical attributes, steel, plastic, length, weight, all huge things we may consider. But again, why you buy such a heavy car? You know, a heavy car probably have bad fuel economy, right? Oh, hey, the Tesla looks marvelous, but it's probably not the best made car with the best components, right? There may be some argument there. Hey, why did you buy that SUV that was really big? It's actually too long. Want the long wheelbase version of that? I'm gonna have issues parking in Chicago, or double parking, or doing something of the sort. So what are some of the benefits? We say, hey, once again, number of people. Buy the larger SUV, right? With 3-row capacity, you can fit more people in. Buy you a Prius, because it's probably one of the greatest cars for fuel mileage outside of a purely electric vehicle. Right? Or you buy for comfort or for safety. For safety, people like Volvos, and what's the other one? Can't think of it. Or comfort. For comfort, people buy things like Mercedes-Benz, has all the bells and whistles, right? Very plush seats, things like that. Others say, hey, don't buy that Mercedes-Benz. Don't buy that BMW. Why? If anything goes wrong outside of warranty, the parts cost too much. You might have to buy another car. Right? So say, hey, get you a more practical car. Get a Toyota or a Honda, a car that lasts forever. And if you need to fix it, you can buy the parts from eBay and take it to the cheap. Right? So some people are like, hey, those are some great benefits. Others say, hey, what about like after sales things? Like, hey, we wash the car, bring it to a free car wash. So we do a free oil change if you lease for 3 years, right? Those things are part of the service aspects of the car. And then we say the big one, symbolic. You're gonna buy the Benz anyway, right? You're gonna buy a Ferrari, a Bugatti, or whatever. Like, why should you spend that much money on a thing with 4 wheels that goes from point A Maybe it boosts your self-esteem, confidence, it makes you feel goal-oriented. Maybe it just makes you feel luxurious, right? And that's stuff we all like to feel, right? We would like to feel luxurious, great about themselves. So huge. Other symbolic, economy, people who are practical, right? Who's worried about the economy, so they scale down. They buy according to what they actually make, what the economy is doing as a market. Things like dynamism and sport, right? All sorts of kind of changing features. Perfume. All right, perfume is a great one. Cologne perfume. Think of this. Perfume is let me think of a similar category. Perfume and wine are very, very similar. Right? A lot of people may not know about the 100 to 1,000 types of perfume and cologne or Nordstrom's or Macy's, whatever. So you gotta test them, taste them. But most importantly, that might not even be the selling point. The major selling point would be the thing that catches your attention, which is the bottle. It's like with wine, right? One says, oh, I like the good Pinot Noir, I like the good Chardonnay. Or another people like, yeah, just give me anything, a red or a white. Which one do you pick? You might pick the really good, fancy, schmancy bottle, the one that caught your attention, right? So we say, hey, perfumes and colognes kind of the same way. Usually whoever has the most clever packaging stands out because no one's smelling 100 colognes to test, and no one's tasting 100 different types of wine to figure out which one they really like. So at the end of the day, kind of make this decision based off the bottling. All right, but here they're saying, hey, how can we dissect this? We say the physical aspect of perfume is scent based on flowers, fruits, and spices, right? A concoction of all of these. The benefits, some deodorize, some cover odors, and some attract. We say maybe some exacerbate natural pheromones, which makes be more naturally smelling perfumes, colognes. Others may be a little bit more stronger. Others kind of deodorize, may smell very fresh, clean, etc. Service, once again, the people at the counter selling to us, or the people in some way at the kiosk that are offering to us, right? They convince us to buy. We don't have perfect information on these products. We need somebody to convince us with information, right? With some influence. Change your minds. And then the symbolism, feminine or masculine. All right, we can kind of smell that. Except for when in class, you could smell a particular type of cologne on a man, and you're like, that smells like my perfume, right? Like, well, that's a kind of masculine, feminine scent. Or you smell another, and I like that. Like, this smells very masculine to some degree, right? And then we talked about adaptation and standardization, what that's all about, what are the benefits for that, the physical aspects, service aspects, and symbolic. Here's product policy, adapt or standardize, right? Levitt, in his 1983 thesis on the globalization of markets, says standardize as much as feasible. We say if we standardize, we probably have a very strong possibility of scaling. Economies of scale, right? It makes it simple for us. It's more simpler, the better it is. Right? When we have to have different products all over the world with different features, it makes the accounting, it makes the finances, it makes the production, it makes the marketing more costly. It's just more expensive. And you think, how long can you keep this up before you actually start making a profit? So at the end of the day, you either have to be product centered and say, hey, we are going to try to influence the consumer to buy it almost in a forceful, coercive way so that we can maintain a certain cost structure and make a profit, right? Or we say, hey, you know what? It's an emerging market. An emerging market is different than a developed market. Developed market, you've already solidified their tastes and preferences, they like what they like, they know what they know. But emerging markets, like, hey, you know what, I think we should standardize. Right? Just offer them what we have, and we can influence them. That might be another thing. Right? Have more fluid sort of decision making. Right? They're not so crystallized in their thinking as developed countries. Customized when needed around standard core product, right? Coca-Cola or McDonald's. Coca-Cola sells the same product all over the world. Yes, maybe in Mexico, right, the Coca-Cola may be pure cane sugar, right? Come back to the US, might still be highly fructose corn syrup. Kind of still tastes the same core taste, but it's a little bit different. You still can taste that it is Coca-Cola. And so we changed the bottle, we changed the packaging, we changed the marketing, so it's not offensive, it resonates with the culture. And then you just kind of work around that. And McDonald's too, you say core product. What is the core product of McDonald's? We make fast food relatively cheap and relatively decent tasting. Right? Relatively decent tasting food. In global industries, more standardization opportunities, firms which standardize show superior performance. Within an industry, similar world markets and opportunities, firms which customize perform better. So we say, hey, you know, customization works better if there's similar world markets and opportunities, which means you can expand, but expand to culture that's very similar to your own. Right? You may think that maybe Europe would be sort of a good example of that because all the countries are so close, right? You have the EU, you have this common currency, but it's completely different. German has one of the most exhaustive production standards used in making things. Like there's just standards like 5,000 plus different standards you gotta buy. And they have a board of Germans that oversee these sort of standard protocols on production. So if you are an outsider trying to penetrate the German market with your vehicle, and they don't have those German standards, and you're trying to adapt those standards, you're probably just not going to be able to do so. It's just not going to work. It's too much protocol, right? Even as opposed to neighboring France, right? Not so far away, England, right? Things like that. Or the Italians in the South, right? They're very close, but the cars are completely manufactured in totally different ways, different parts, different standards. Right? And then there's Levitt says we should have a down-to-earth approach based on product attributes. Right? Down to earth. He basically said that it should be, you should present your offering and its attributes, but over time make it more simple over time. Right? The point is, even if it's a complex something, over time adapt it to make it more approachable and down to earth. Which is kind of Apple has kind of done that, right? It's just more kind of simplifying the product over time so that everybody can understand. It's almost a no-brainer. You want to create like a no-brainer to the consumer. All right, and then lastly, reporting standardization product element. We say percentage of standardizing and reasons for adapting the marketing mix. So this is the reported level of standardization of product strategies and reasons for adapting, right? 78% of the reasons we would say would be product quality, 72% product names, so those are high on the list. Right? We say, hey, the quality is probably one of the major reasons for standardizing. Right? That way we can keep things consistent, but we have the same manufacturing process, the same production, we we know exactly the quality, right? If we change that in some way, we'll probably have a huge margin of error, we'll probably have a lot of callbacks, recalls on things, right? A lot of things bad happen. Brand name, right? Important. Once again, we say, hey, I just talked about how Chick-fil-A is ethical. So it's a brand name, it's a reputation to me, being ethical. They probably want to uphold that. The image goes along with that. Performance, high up. Let's see low on there. Delivery and installation, that's maybe not the biggest sort of issue. And after sale service and warranties. Because a lot of times that has to do with specialty products, right? After service sales and warranties. Not everything has an after sales service or a warranty. Some reasons for adopting the marketing mix, right? Adapting. Cultures on high on the list. Market development is high on the list. We say, what is an emerging market? Is it a market that's already settled, right? A developed market. The competition, who are all the players in that market, the laws, which is huge, right? Economic differences. Low on that list would be differences in physical conditions, marketing infrastructure, and level of customer similarity. All right, so let's wrap up with our blurbs before we get out of here. And maybe on Thursday, we'll go over our marketing presentations and plans. Maybe we'll get some time and kind of work on that and help you out with that, think of some ideas, things that can maybe help you with on Thursday. All right, who wants to go first?
So I did mine on protests in Serbia. So in November 2024, mass protests began in Manisa. It occurred due to a railway station collapsing in the city, causing 15 people dead and 2 people were severely injured. Early March, the protests have spread to over 400 cities. During the 15-minute silence, I think it was like 2 days ago this happened, protesters claimed that there was a sonic cannon that was used to clear everything from the street. So a sonic cannon is a military grade. It's a long-range device that is specialized on a loudspeaker that emits like high-powered sound waves. It causes sharp ear pain and disorientation or panic. The government denies that they use this, but many were sure that they used it to clear everything.
You know, if there's any way that they could, like, you know, someone has captured footage of it, or maybe verify
Yes, they have,
decibels of it.
they have footage, I saw it, and it's basically what a sonic cannon is, like everyone started panicking, like the whole, like road, like split into two, like everyone just started rushing, people just fell to the ground, because you kind of like lose, like your sense of where you're at, so people just started dropping to the ground and like separating, and,
So the government can't admit to it, they're like reliable, like
Mhm.
someone, like,
a lot
lose
of
their hearing
people,
over.
yeah, a lot of people had to get, medical attention,
Mhm.
some were hitting they fell and hit their head, busted open their head, obviously there was a lot of people, so it was just so chaotic, but you could see in the video, everyone's silent, and then you just hear a rush, like everyone, and it just separates, like everything just scatters, so.
Do you find that this protest is different than protests that you see here in the US?
I didn't really look at it. Like I just saw the video of everyone being silent.
Was the silence, do you think the
I
silence?
think it was a lot different
big baseball season starts.
Yeah, we already started, we actually have to keep it in time.
Well, I mean,
It started this morning.
this one.
Yeah, 5 a.m. this morning.
Right,
They played the,
go ahead.
I did, Pepsi's requiring, copies with $2 billion. What is it? It's a probiotic, soda brand, slow in sugar, made with apple cider vinegar. It's popular for gut health, and it also has refreshing flavors. So why did Pepsi do this? Of course, consumers are shifting towards healthier beverage alternatives. It expands Pepsi's portfolio beyond traditional sugary sodas, and also capitalizes on the functional beverage of the market. What's the impact on the industry? Increased competition in health-focused beverage sectors. There's potential for more big brand investing in functional drinks, and also strengthens Pepsi's position in the wellness market. I believe this is a kind of a smart move for Pepsi because obviously they'll make more money doing this. Owning more companies and putting it under one, it's kind of just goes back to the pyramid effect of kind of just one guy at the top, all the different companies underneath it.
Do you know, Coca-Cola, like, kind of made the same move, like, purchase,
I'm not sure about that actually.
pretty sure we have the same move, those,
Yeah, exactly.
That's okay.
So I had also done mine about this, and I don't have a ton to add other than that Coca-Cola does have a rivaling brand that they recently started called Simply Pop. Very similar name.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it either. I've seen the Poppy for a few years. I first saw it at a local store that I worked at a few years back, but yeah, I didn't have a whole lot to add. I thought you did a good job covering it. But yeah, Coca-Cola does have a rivaling brand that they recently started, and I think this was a response to that and a way for Pepsi to kind of bring in a new audience. I've noticed that Pepsi also likes to bring in brands under the Pepsi name without kind of associating it with Pepsi. So you got like Powerade, Mountain Dew. No, Powerade's not under it. Gatorade is. Sorry. Gatorade, Mountain Dew, Poppy. All these different brands are kind of underneath Pepsi, but they don't try to associate it with Pepsi. Whereas with Coca-Cola, they kind of try to associate it with Coca-Cola.
They try to use the power maybe of Coca-Cola's like marketing and branding as a sub.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Anyone else? I think it's a good idea to use the word poppy, right? Because you just don't find, you always find soda companies avoiding the word pop, which everybody calls soda, right? They call it just pop.
Just typing wise, but talking about TikTok trend that recently popped up. It's Republican versus Democrat makeup styles, or makeup slash, general style. And this just kind of comes to show how political affiliations actually do have, like, shape different industries, whether we realize it or not, and our beauty standards as well. So, kind of the impact that has and why that's relevant in today's world. Well, first of all, let me just show you the difference between both of them. Republican makeup is kind of that sober look, often associated with like something that's polished, traditional, very neutral. Democrat makeup, on the other hand, is bold, very creative makeup, expressive styles, more colorful nature, and tends to be a little bit more experimental. The impact that this has had on the beauty standards we have is that it highlights how our political identities can influence personal style and consumer preference. So whether we think of it or not, it kind of does have an impact on how we want to be portrayed. Platforms like TikTok, which is where it originated, and Instagram definitely amplify these distinctions that we otherwise wouldn't make so clearly. Turning makeup into a form of political expression. We already know that makeup kind of has evolved beyond just aesthetics and how you look and how you want to be portrayed. But it is a form of self-expression and telling a story and telling people how you want to be seen. It can reflect your values and your political beliefs in this case. And this has forced companies to kind of take sides. So beforehand, I feel like this industry was very separate from anything political, and they're forcing companies to be accountable and kind of, if not pick a side, be more mindful of what they're doing and what they're portraying their brand as.
Yeah, they kind of passed on that. That would mean like Maybelline and L'Oreal, like they would have to, if they begin to promote certain types of makeup, their advertisements might have to be somewhat political, right? It may have to be a liberal aspect. That's just the target market they're going for. They're going for the opposite side of it. Have to be more conservative sort of emotions out there, subtle, religious things of that nature, right? So it all makes it a little bit interesting on the divide. Thank you so much for that. All right, for those of you that didn't have any blurs, Thursday, come with some, and we will finish this one on then. See you later.